and now you're sort of at this price point of $6 per user where everyone can have access to that tool.
I'm Ryan Epps. I'm here with Tech Times, and we're interviewing Matt Cimaglia today, CEO and co-founder of Alteon.io, correct?
Yep.
Now, Alteon.io is a cloud-based content management system that essentially streamlines the workflow for content creators just in general, and makes it easier for them to create their content and get their content to their audience. Their recent extension for Apple, Final Cut Pro, makes it even easier for them to get their edits out and get their workflow out. Now, Matt, can you tell me a bit about who you are, why you started Alteon, and I guess just your how you got to your position now?
Well, ironically, it all started in the fourth grade, and I wrote as things happen, right? It's one of those lifelong journeys that I've had personally that I fell in love with the industry at a very, very young age. I even remember prior to the fourth grade, my parents got a Sony Handycam, like one of the old 8mm tape cameras, and I remember when it came, opening up the box and looking at it and just kind of being amazed, and I don't know why, it just something gravitated towards it, and when I was in the fourth grade, I really embraced technology. And I think that time period also, I was very into computers. And there's a really funny video of me that the local TV station did where I'm explaining the studio setup at my elementary school and how I cobbled together this graphics program so that we could have visual graphics on our TV program every morning using a Mac, actually, at the time, not knowing, sort of that this was to set up my my lifelong journey.
It sounds like a lot Casey Neistat almost, right? It reminds me of Casey Neistat so much with the Handycam, the Mac. It's beautiful. And you always wanted to be a vid editor? You always wanted to do video editing, or was it something else?
Yeah, I was always sort of torn because I loved the editing portion of putting together a film and directing, and I've sort of always been in various leadership roles throughout school, but I would say that when it came to really making a decision, it was kind of made for me. I graduated I graduated college early. And the irony is I went out to the local news stations. This was in Orlando, Florida at the time, and applied for positions and went to some post houses and some production companies. And again, I was really unsure of exactly what position I wanted to do, but I knew that I wanted to be in the industry. And everyone sort of laughed me out of the room and said, "Look, you're way too young. You're 20 years old. Why would we hire you for a position at our company that's not an internship?" And I ended up creating a company, and I did it sort of, for the corporate veil, if you will. So I had a friend of mine in college that built a website, and this is, circa 2002.
Yep.
And, not a lot of companies had websites at that time. And I had a very professional looking website that made it feel very legit. And I started applying for jobs and productions, and was very successful at that, and ended up building my first production team and my first office on the back lot at Universal Studios in Orlando.
Amazing.
And I remember sort of going in my first early days and people thinking that I was the intern, and I was like, no, this is actually my office. I run a business out of here, and it just grew from there.
That's amazing. And you did video editing, freelancing for NBC and several other places, news sites as well. Was this through your business or on the side?
No, it was an interesting time period where NBC was largely transitioning from analog editing to digital, so
Yep.
nonlinear. And it was a really exciting time for me because I was really into technology and also storytelling at the same time, right? Because
Amazing.
it shouldn't really matter what tool you're using as long as you could tell a really good story.
Absolutely.
And I think that what was so interesting about that time period is that I was really young, and NBC saw that, and they said, why don't we hire this young kid to go and travel all around the country or world for us to help integrate a digital workflow. And so I started out in Miami, and then Atlanta and Chicago, and I went to Burbank a bit in New York, and really started, embracing this ideology of nonlinear editing and crashing news segments for nightly news or the Today Show. And it was really exciting because I was young and I was able to travel, and I'm still running my company on the side.
Yeah.
And I have this really great contract with NBC. And then throughout a couple of years, I decided, I was sort of burnt out at 25. And I wanted to really focus on building my production company at that time period.
Absolutely. And then what led you down the road for Alteon? What drew that path? Is creator economy, did that come into mind around 25 or later?
No, I mean, I think that the idea of Alteon, ironically, I was at it's kind of funny because there's a couple guys that were at this lunch with me one day where we were literally drawing on the paper tablecloth that was at an Italian restaurant in Chicago, and had this idea of servers and content management systems, and how we could connect Chicago at the time. It wasn't even outside of Chicago. It was
Yeah.
more in that area, because there's a lot of fiber connectivity in the city, just based on the various trading companies that exist there. And so we were thinking about this from a post perspective, that we wanted to build an infrastructure that obviously my production company at the time could be able to utilize, but then also speed up production. And
Yeah.
we were up against some of the biggest agencies in the country at that time period. And I was servicing clients like Allstate Insurance or Schwab or Citadel. And, these were all Fortune 100, 500 clients that were expecting my company to be up to a standard as, some bigger agencies. And not having those tools really hindered us in some senses. We kind of had to fake it in some senses, where we would just hire an extra person, an actual body, to actually handle a lot of our media and our asset management for specific clients. And again, the tools didn't exist at a cost point that were really accessible to us.
Yeah.
And I exited my production company about 6 years ago, and I sat on some boards and did some investing of my own. And always sort of was looking forward in terms of what technology I would start embracing, or what path I would be going on to next. And just sort of serendipitously stumbled into the fact that I was working with an agency that was rather large, and they also didn't have a content management system or a way to communicate all of their various offices. And so
Mm.
I proposed a system to them at the time, and it was about a $2 million startup cost. It was probably hundreds of thousands of dollars a month to maintain. And then on top of it,
Yeah.
it was going to be about a 9 month lead time. And that's when the
My
light bulb
God.
really went off for me. And the CFO said, look, Matt, we just can't do this. It's going to
Yeah.
be too much. And I thought, hey, if this was a SaaS solution, and I provided this to everyone, that's kind of a business model, and it's very similar to if you want to equate it to like a Gmail, or
Yep.
Google Suite, I should say, or an Office 365. They really killed the whole market of people going and setting up servers and email servers to just do corporate email. And now you're sort of at this price point of $6 per user, where everyone can have access to that tool.
And can you walk me through it a bit? How does it work? Like, say I have a video and it's all cloud-based, you explained, right? How do I get it from A to B?
Yeah, I mean, we have multitude of ways that you can upload content. And I think that just holistically, I want to step back for a second and
Yeah.
say, we're we're an enterprise class tool. So Alteon is an enterprise class tool, but it's democratized so that we can access the mainstream market, right? So
Okay.
that means that everyone on the planet, if you're a TikTok influencer all the way up to a large agency, you would have access to the same tool.
Okay.
And that was really important to me because, again, I came as a creator and I came as an editor into this space. So I really understand that ideology very well of what it takes to create something. And I know what it's like when you get into an editor's groove and you don't want to think about another technology or context switch into another system. And when I was running my agency, or even agencies today, or production companies that I talk to, there are 5 or 6 different platforms that you use just to produce a 30-second segment.
Yep.
So that's a lot of different tools that you need. So really, from the ground up, we built Alteon to be a production ecosystem. And we
Amazing.
will be expanding out over the next couple of years what that platform involves. But to take you through the steps as you asked, is it's you upload content 3 different ways. One is just a standard web uploader. That's typical drag and drop. You just throw your files in and it uploads.
Yep.
The second is we're leveraging IBM Aspera. IBM Aspera allows you to take advantage of the entire pipe of your internet bandwidth. So let's say you have 100 gigabit per second link. You're fully utilizing that link to upload whatever that content is. And we built it in a specific way where it's called the Alteon Accelerator. And I can install this accelerator on as many computers as I want and log into it as many computers as I want. And now I have remote access to those systems. So a great way to kind of put it is, I'm on a shoot today, I'm running around like crazy. Instead of sending a DIT or a digital assistant on set, I can actually just plug my computer into the internet, log in, and now my assistant, who's back at my office in another state or another country, can have access to the files that are being uploaded to that computer locally.
Amazing.
So that means that they can start triggering uploads to Alteon Cloud instantly. And then the third mechanism that we have for uploading is our NLE workflow extensions. So whether that's through Adobe Premiere, or as you mentioned earlier, we now support Final Cut Pro.
Yep.
So these are 3 different methods that you can upload content to the cloud. And we try to make it as seamless as possible. And once that content is hitting the cloud, there's a lot of orchestration that happens behind the scenes. So we're transcoding that media into a house format. So we created an MP4 lightweight format as a proxy, so that if you're on a very slow internet connection and you need to go edit that 8K Blackmagic RAW footage right now, you can go in and download some lightweight MP4s, edit your entire sequence, and then maybe somebody on the other end that has the raw footage, they can go in and pull that and up-res it after the fact for you.
Amazing.
Again, this streamlines the entire workflow of editing.
Yeah. And you mentioned how a video isn't just the editing, right? There's writing, there's making a photo, right? For YouTube, let's say. Are there other tools beyond just editing software, connections, right? Inside of the tool set? Do you have, say, a Google Assistant with Docs? Do you have any other forms of aid in that sense?
Right now, we're really focusing on media files. And I think that that's really important for our users, right? Because if we can handle that really well, then we can start expanding into other areas. We are starting to take some advice from some of the users that we talk to on a regular basis. And they tell us that basically, they want to be able to pull files from some of the popular cloud file systems, if you will, into Alteon, because they want to be able to catalog it and comment on it. So our commenting feature is really strong, because if I have a lot of media that's brought into Alteon, I'm able to go in and through various timecode links say, hey, this is the start of the shot, or hey, don't include this part, or make sure that this soundbite is in the final edit. And you can add those timecode markers, and that translates out to the nonlinear edit system as markers or as locators. So that's a really powerful tool. That's a lot of the comments that we've received so far.
Yeah.
Right now, we're also focusing on more of a video workflow. So again, being able to pull from my background of almost my entire life. But also, really honing in on the hardest problem first. And
Of
that's
course.
typically video, just because the files are so massive.
Of
And from
course.
there, we're talking about going into visual effects. So how do we help visual effects artists, create their compositions quicker or more fluid, especially as we start to look at file sizes becoming bigger and bigger. How do they have more of a cloud-based workflow where
Yep.
they're able to leverage the full power of the cloud and multiple computers for rendering or storage, as opposed to having to constantly upgrade their own independent system? And then from there, we're looking at doing audio workflows and photography workflows. So when you think about photographers and audio professionals and visual effects artists, again, they all go into the creator medium.
Amazing. And now what about other video editing software? You say DaVinci Resolve, right? I use DaVinci Resolve and Sony Vegas. Do you have any plans of adding them?
For sure, DaVinci. DaVinci's on the roadmap. We actually have started talking with Blackmagic already about
Awesome.
integrating with them. And we're shooting on a Blackmagic camera today, and we
Yep.
shoot in B-RAW. So we started the ability to transcode B-RAW a couple months ago. That was one of our first transcoders that we put into the system. And then from there, we know that we're going to go into Apple ProRes RAW, and then we're going to
Yep.
start allowing to do Red RAW and Airy RAW. So those will be coming out over the next couple quarters. Again, it's very important for us to be able to accept professional formats, especially these RAW formats, into the system, because then as we generate proxies, people can edit them pretty quickly.
Amazing. Oh. And now let's talk a bit about Web3. What does that mean for you? What does that mean for Alteon? How do you see it helping just the
There's
creator economy?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a few areas, and especially as you read the news lately, in terms of royalties and how some of the marketplaces aren't accepting royalties for NFTs, let's say. I think that that landscape is still shifting so much.
For sure.
And when we look at 2001 to 2002, that whole NFT market exploded, and I think that it really set the entire Web3 momentum off significantly for what it really stood for. I've been involved in blockchain for several years. And I was always a firm believer in the technology or the underlying thought process behind it, right? We know that we're always going to evolve with technology. I mean, we're seeing it right now.
Yep.
We're on a Zoom call, sharing high def video back and forth. That wasn't possible 5 years ago, and there's always momentum that's going forward. And I think that in terms of Web3 or NFTs, the messaging got really thrown off over the last year. And obviously you saw the implosion of that happening, and we're now in a crypto winter. But as you sort of think about the technology and the utility of it, right? It was always intended to make it more democratized, right? It
Yep.
was, I will have ownership over my files. So when we look at blockchain, there's a few methods that we think about this. So the first is metadata, right? If I'm shooting a clip today with today's timestamp on it, and it's me in the footage, and we know that for sure, in order to encapsulate that onto a blockchain and know that that metadata can never be changed, that's something that I think moving forward will help, as we sort of think about fake news or people doing deep fakes even for video. If I had a stamp of approval that says, yes, this video is me talking, then there's a validness to that clip. So that's one area of Web3 that I see. Another is NFTs. I think that we're going to start seeing a lot more people minting NFTs, not as a means to, try and go make millions of dollars, but if they do, that's great on them. But I would say that it's more of a means of sharing that content with their friends or their sort of collective audience, so that people can see something that they made or they created, but still retain ownership of that. We're starting to
Absolutely.
see Meta or Twitter and other platforms really get hurt in recent months, because
Yeah.
people are really exposing them into the fact that they've been using their data for various reasons, and they didn't approve of that. And there's still this gray area of, if I upload something to a social media channel, who owns that content? and who can do what with it. And I think that when you start to think about NFTs from that perspective, it's going to be changing for good. And I think that, I sort of think back to me as the 11-year-old kid playing on a computer on a Friday night and exploring. And I'm excited for that next generation of people to come through and really start shaping the technology that we're going to be using in the future.
Absolutely. Well, there's still a ton of pushback, especially with NFTs. There's just in general, right? I mean, if you look in the gaming space, a lot of these people don't really see the utility of NFTs or even just Web3 in general. As you said, it kind of gets all rolled into one. The metaverse, too, people just sigh when you talk about it. Do you find any challenges, see any challenges with just talking about it in general and just being a part of that world?
I think in general, it needs a rebranding. I think that, it's gotten a really bad rap. It's very similar to the .com bust, right?
Yeah.
Anyone post 1990 era, I even kind of remember it vaguely as a kid. It was sort of, oh, you're doing a website and that's bad. Like, why would you go do that? And,
Interesting.
it took a decade for things to catch back up to where, people were embracing websites again and building technology. There's always this sort of first rush of people that come through and exploit it as much as possible, make a ton of money, and then all of a sudden a ton of people lose money as well. I think that you're going to see investors hurting for the next couple of years, or not able to rebound from the sort of massive cash infusions that they've given to companies that really had no product or no business base off of them. I think that you need to, as an investor, always think about sustainable business plans and the founders. Are they legitimate? Have they had past experience? And I think that you've seen a lot of people just throw capital at very young, inexperienced people that didn't necessarily have a business plan. And I think that's also going to hurt the momentum again of sort of Web3.
And how is Alteon leveraging Web3 or even just any of this technology?
Look, I think it's been, I have not hidden my sort of stance on, again, the utility nature of it. I think that as Alteon continues forward, we're looking to build a publisher. And we were always thinking about building this from the beginning of the company. And we always thought, how do we embrace a blockchain? So you'll see in the next 3 to 6 months, we're going to be coming out with some NFT publishing tools for our platform.
Interesting. It's both exciting and a bit scary, I feel like, with how people kind of react with NFTs these days, but that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think about, an NFT where you'll see these aggregation sources where if I post pictures of a dog or pictures of my vacation, but I post it on a blockchain, right? I own that content. But you'll have an aggregated resource that you can go on and say, hey, I want to go look at Matt's vacation because he posted a bunch of pictures. You would go through that resource and you'll be able to visualize out whatever that content is. Again, I wouldn't post it because I'm thinking, hey, somebody wants to pay me $1,000 for a picture of a beach that I just posted online. But it's more because I want to share this with my audience or with my friends.
Amazing.
And that's really where I see a lot of NFT publishing going, again, to retain that ownership and also to make sure that there's that provenance, right? That record keeping of that image or of that object, or audio file or image file or video file, all of that provenance and making sure that there is tracking of that so that in 10 years from now, we could say, oh, well, let's use this picture in a production. What was the provenance of it? Who created it? Or, how was it maintained over these years? And we know that using this technology, it'll help better for the content creators of the future.
Amazing. Well, that's one thing I think positive thing that NFTs did was help digital artists, help creators just in general get their art out there in a new and exciting way, for sure, and give them money, right? A lot of the artists, digital artists especially, didn't have as much sway in how much they got paid and stuff, whereas NFTs actually aided in that endeavor, for sure.
Yeah, and I saw, I followed a few artists that have been around for decades, and they started embracing NFTs, and all of a sudden their physical artwork from the past decades, right? that value started going up. So
Yep.
intrinsically, it just started helping overall arts community. Again, it's unfortunate that some people exploited it, but I think overall there was some good that came of it.
Absolutely. No, thank you. And is there anything else you wanted to talk about Alteon? Let me kind of go back to Alteon for a bit.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that in terms of Alteon, again, we're looking to really expand over the next couple of
Mhm.
years, and we have a huge roadmap that we've been at this prior to the pandemic, and
Mhm.
I actually there's a really weirdly timed article that I published in Forbes in December of 2019 talking about remote workforces and mitigating against disaster. And
Interesting.
never did I imagine 3 months
You
later,
called it.
the entire world would be shut down.
Mhm.
And, when we built or when we started to build Alteon, it was in 2019. And we broke ground at the end of 2019. I started hiring my developers then. We started sort of going through the paces of building this company in terms of a technology backbone. And we've seen a lot change over the last couple of years
Yeah.
for the good in terms of what our sort of mission was at Alteon, and that's really centered around remote workforces, right?
Yep.
And I think that as we sort of catalog the last decade, when I had my original office, it was clients coming into the office, sitting on a couch, watching an edit for the day, and then people started emailing files, right? So clients didn't really come into the office anymore. And our editors and producers and other people started asking, well, why are we coming into the office every day? Is there a way that we could do this from home? And so we've seen this evolution over the last decade, but more so in the last 3 years,
Yeah.
especially as the pandemic has, really shifted everyone into a remote position. And when we thought about Alteon originally, we always hoped that we would get there, but we knew that that was about a 5-year uphill battle. We condensed it probably into 3 months, right? The
Wow.
pandemic hit, everyone was now remote, and to be able to share files seamlessly and work with producers. And one of the things that we have to explain to people even when they're uploading files is they say, oh well, it's going to take me 24 hours to upload all of the content from my shoot. Well, we have an argument for that, saying, well, it would take you 24 to 48 hours to ship that drive. It would cost you way a lot more than what it's costing you for Alteon, and there's no guarantee that drive would actually make it there on time. We've all missed shipments and deadlines there. And the other benefit to Alteon is once that first file goes online. So if you have 100 files, the first file hits the cloud. That means that your editor on the other end can immediately have access to that file. So it's really not a 24-hour upload when you have to really take that into consideration. So I think that in terms of the future, we're looking to a lot of camera to cloud technology. So one of our partners is Teradek.
Okay.
We've really been working closely with them over the last couple of years to make sure that when we come out with this as an option, it's really perfect. And we have some competitors out there, but they do one of the many functions that we do. And when you look at Alteon, we house all content for the production, not just the final video.
Yeah.
So, we really have a proper workflow built for today.
And once the video is finally finished, is there a way that through Alteon I can upload it to YouTube, TikTok, whatever, it's instantaneous?
Yeah, and that goes to our publisher. That's the
Yeah.
thing that I was talking about before, where once you have that final approved video, and by the way, for us, we're really thinking holistically around what approval means, right?
Yeah.
Because I've had many final versions. I have final version
No,
1
it's
or
never
final version
finished.
2 or
Yep.
final version 3, and it's until the client actually puts their stamp of approval on it, or
Yep.
a manager or a producer puts their stamp of approval on something, it's not finished. So we're really taking that into consideration as we build out our approval platform to go publish. And again, we will be, embracing all of the social media platforms in addition to blockchains.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
Now, is there anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think that, it's been really a great journey. And then, our process with Apple over the last 7 months has been really influential in terms of how we're shaping the product. They found us at NAB and back in April, and we started talking to them about how we could really help out Final Cut Pro and provide a solution so that editors and people using that platform can now have access to a cloud tool. So that's been really, really fun. And we came out with that product last week, and the whole team is really proud because, again, we were able to work with Apple and have some understanding of areas where we can really help out the community. And again, we're really looking at this from the bottom up approach. We haven't really built this product to go full enterprise, and it's just the 1%ers that have access to it. It's really everyone, and that's something that we're all really excited to see. What people create using Alteon, or what's the commercial, or what's the family memory that people have built because they published something out on YouTube and now everyone's seeing it. That's sort of the exciting part of the journey that we're in now with the company. Having built it for the last 3 years, we get to really see our users and how they're using the platform.
Awesome. I see utility too for just people, even individual, right? A lot of YouTubers and creators are just one person as opposed to multiple. For instance, Casey Neistat, right? Or even just other people in the space. And it's interesting to see a lot of people who travel a lot can use Alteon to their benefit as well. And I think that's amazing.
It's funny that you say travel because we have Peter Greenberg as a user,
Nice.
and he's a travel veteran, and he's been around forever. And we've actually spent the last year helping his team digitize and upload 40 years of travel archive up to Alteon Cloud. And this is every format that you could imagine. So it's beta, it's HD, it's SD, it's every tape format you could imagine. And it's been incredible because he's traveling constantly and he's always on the road. But what's been really cool is he on the road will go through and spend a couple hours a week just tagging clips that he didn't remember existed from almost 40 years ago. And that's been really powerful because now he's looking to build a new series based on some of this archive content. And, it's something that, again, people will now be able to see based on the fact that Alteon helped contribute to that effort.
Yeah.
And, and as you sort of mentioned to some of these other YouTubers or influencers, for them to be able to shoot on an iPhone or a camera that's connected to an internet connection in the future, to be able to have that content immediately hit the cloud and somebody else is able to edit it or catalog it, or as you're traveling, you don't have to worry about, well, do I have 2 hard drives with me to back up all of that source content to make sure that, it's not stolen, or I'm putting it in multiple places in case there's damage to it. To be able to know that all of that travel content or the shoot footage that you're working on for a particular production is safe and secure in the cloud, that's something that we really strive for. And a lot of the independent creators that we're talking to, we have to almost convince them sometimes to change their workflow, because a lot of people say, hey, I've got a hard drive, I paid for it once, why should I pay a monthly fee for the cloud? And our biggest challenge to that question is, well, what happens when you're at the coffee shop and the server accidentally spills coffee on that hard drive and it just crashes, right? I've been there, right? In my early 20s, I had 1 hard drive because that's all I could afford, and I lost it, and I lost tons of media, and that was a rookie mistake. And I sort of look at people now that are creators. It's so inexpensive to go on to Alteon, and we really purposefully made it that way. And we were able to do so because of our partners at IBM.
Awesome. May I ask how much it is? Is it monthly? Is it yearly?
Yeah. So again, all that ebbs and flows of the production industry, right? I'm busy 1 month, but then I'm not busy the next month. So as a minimum, it's $10 a month, and
Wow.
And then from there, it's $20 per terabyte. So our premium user is 1 terabyte of space plus your usage. And the way that we built it around as well is that we have this concept of groups. So let's say I have a group for my company. I could go and pay for a petabyte of storage. I could just pay for tons and tons of storage, and then you could come to me as a freelancer and only have to pay $9 a month. So that's really helpful, especially for freelancers that are having to front a lot of the cost for their clients sometimes of, cloud storage fees and things like that. Now the client is actually going to be able to pay for that.
And there Is there any way you could see, because we talk about cloud all the time, is there any way you see cloud itself, cloud infrastructure growing through Alteon, through just age, getting
You know,
better,
I
I should say?
Yeah, I mean, I think speeds are increasingly getting better. Even when we started this company 3 years ago, we
Mhm.
weren't at the speeds that we are today. You know, compute power is incredibly massive, and a lot of the ways that we've built our transcoding algorithms, it's not linear in the
Yep.
sense that, you know, when I upload a file, it's going to file one, file two, file three to transcode those files like it would on your home system
Mhm.
or your workstation. We're doing everything horizontally. So if I upload 500 files, all 500 files get their own transcode node, and
Yep.
now they're being transcoded immediately. So, you know, just that alone, I think in terms of cloud infrastructure and taking advantage of that is really helpful. And then when you start to think about global, right? We live in a very global economy these days, and we will be expanding out to other territories around the world starting in Q1. We wanted to make sure that we had everything really dialed in for North America before we started expanding out. But as you start to think about that expansion, it's really helpful to our users because now if I'm uploading in Germany, let's say, because I'm traveling there for the day and I'm on a shoot, we know that that footage will end up going to my data center in Dallas
Yep.
that you know is my main sort of data center for my region that I've signed up for on Alteon. And now I know that when I get home, all of that footage is going to be there waiting for me.
Amazing. Oh. Yeah, I was just curious to ask you how you saw cloud infrastructure. It's just an interesting, just as interesting, I feel like, as Web3 itself. And it's just going to get even better as we um, use it, as we
Yeah, I mean,
utilize it.
think about internet speeds, right? I mean,
Yeah.
46% of the US right now has fiber optic cabling either to their house or to their community. And, you know, when we look at some of the bills that have been recently passed within the government, that's going to be far exceeded in the coming decade, let's say.
Yep.
And so, I mean, I have a you know, a fiber internet connection where I live. It's 1 gig up, 1 gig down. You know, that is an incredible amount of speed. So now when you start to think about cloud computing or cloud infrastructures, it's almost going to be your local data center or your local SAN, right?
Yep.
Because if I'm able to connect to a server at 1 gig speeds, why else, you know, right now would I need anything faster than that? Obviously, Murphy's law, file sizes are getting bigger and camera size files are getting bigger
Yep.
and so on. But I think you are seeing this trajectory of internet speeds becoming more increasingly fast. And that's going to ultimately benefit the home user to where they won't have to have stacks of hard drives laying around housing their footage. Everything will be neatly stored and safely stored in the cloud.
Beautiful. Beautiful. The Final Cut Pro can be found, the extension can be found free on the Apple Store, correct? Yeah.
Yeah. So all of our extensions are free. Again, we just want people to be able to use it and have access to the cloud.
Awesome. And there's an Adobe one as well, right? And that can be found where?
Correct. Yeah. So everything's accessible on our homepage,
Beautiful.
alteon.io. And you'll see,
Beautiful.
you know, there's Final Cut links and there's Adobe links on there. And then once you sign up for an account, you know, you can have a free account on Alteon and kick the tires and see how you like it and log in using one of our workflow extensions. And, you know, it's only going to continue to get better. And I think that what's been incredible about our community is there are people that have been with us on this journey for the last year when we launched our first initial beta releases of the platform. And you know, I had an email from a user actually last night, believe it or not, who said that they just loved the progress that they've seen, especially recently, and just how fluid it is for them to be able to work. And I think that that's really telling. You know, people really stuck with us, and it is going to take the community in order to build this platform, right? We know that
Yep.
today it's a good platform, but it's only going to continue to get better over time.
Absolutely. Oh, thank you, Matt. Is there anything else you wanted to close with?
No, I really
No.
appreciate your time, and you know, everyone who's watching this today, I really appreciate their time too. And if anyone needs to get a hold of us, info@alteon.io. That's the best place to reach any of our customer success team, and you know, anyone that wants to ask some questions. We have lots of people standing by.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Matt. Thank you.
Thank you.